Good afternoon. It's Friday, August 7th. Time for the daily reflection. I want to read to you an essay. When my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington. Though I was admitted to the hospital the following day, I just had to see and feel it for myself, that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Though I was surrounded by two loving parents, plenty of brothers, sisters, and cousins, their love would not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so easily takes root in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain. Yet so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in. And then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said if each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. That was an essay written by Congressman John Lewis before his death. Congressman Lewis is part of my hero group. I've become aware of my absolute respect and admiration for this group, which includes John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and others late in my life. As a teen, I remember looking up to Dr. King as he proclaimed nonviolence amid the protests, even as this was not a popular position to take with my friends and family. I was never reprimanded for this stance. Usually it was just simply the silent treatment. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody responded. They just walked away. The admiration continued to grow over the years, and then took a major leap forward when my son Alex started working as a research assistant at the Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute. It's located on the Stanford campus. The Institute's purpose is twofold: publish the writings of Dr. King and provide education materials for schools about Dr. King's life. Each year, the center also held a banquet and convocation during the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend. And Alex had added responsibilities during that time. He called me one day before the first event and said they've asked him to take pictures, and he wondered if his camera would be good enough. I assured him it would. And I said, I'd be curious to know how it goes, so call me back. He did, and told me it went well. The second year he was there, he called me after the event. And I don't remember the name of the person who he picked up at San Francisco Airport and drove back to Stanford campus, or the pictures that he took of that person. I just remember in my vagueness, another one of the heroes that worked with Dr. King in the leadership conference. Another one. Dang, my son gets to talk to this person. Gets to have a long conversation on the road, on the way from the airport and back to it. How I wish I had been in that car at least one of those trips. I'm jealous. And then it was in 2017, while on vacation, that Joan and I decided that on our trip from New Orleans to Atlanta, we would take a detour. We went to Selma, Alabama. That's where the Edmund Pettus Bridge is, that iconic bridge in the civil rights movement. And we spent time in Selma looking and feeling the research. It was in that trip that I learned more about Congressman Lewis's history, and I became a huge fan. I was saddened to hear of his death last month. It marks the passing of an era. But as he wrote in his essay, he looks forward to the next generation, because in all honesty, one generation needs to pass the mantle of leadership to the next. And I think Congressman Lewis, Congressman Cummings, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have all done that. Now it's our turn to stand up, to speak out, to, as Lewis says, get in that good, necessary trouble. I wonder where that will take all of us. Remembering someone who offered these words: the way of peace, the way of love, and nonviolence is the more excellent way. I almost hear Paul writing to the church in Rome. The church in Corinth, 1 Corinthians 13. I will tell you of a more excellent way. Congressman Lewis, rest in peace, and may we indeed get into good trouble, necessary trouble, for the sake of humanity and equality.